Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to our campaigns. Today, this evening, we bring you some exciting speakers, 4 brilliant young activists talking to you about campaigns that are close to everyone's heart. Sometimes we hold them dear to our hearts, but we don't actually know what's happening. Our speakers today will give you the 101 about what's happening, and then we're going to have a discussion to find out about what the similarities are and how we can all work together to unite, to move forward, to end these injustices. Our first speaker, Amro Naif, who will be talking to us about Palestine. So if I hand it over to Amro.
Thank you very much for having me on this webinar, and it is my honor to be amongst you all. Before I start speaking or giving a brief about Palestine, an English historian once said, "The darkest hour is just before the dawn." And today we live actually in the darkest time, and you can see the injustice around the world, in Rohingya, in Uyghur, in Kashmir, in Palestine, in Yemen, everywhere. So but we always believe there is a hope. The darker it gets, the closer to the dawn we are. And what we have learned from history, that nothing will last forever. So it's just a matter of time, and it will end for sure. So here is like a short brief about what's going on in Palestine and what the Palestinians face in their daily life. But before we go through this, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Amro Naif. I'm a member of the Association of Student Activism for Palestine. We support the Palestinian societies across the UK universities. And I hope other members, like any other societies, would like to get some support. We are here to help. And thanks, FOA, for inviting me to be here with everyone. So here is like a short brief about what's going on in Palestine. Palestine is living under the longest occupation in history. Since 1948, Israel committed the most horrific massacres against the indigenous people in Palestine, which today known as the Nakba, or catastrophe in English. So living under occupation is a very harsh experience, and I can tell from my experience, as I grew up in Palestine, Palestinians face so many challenges in their daily life. They face the unlawful killing, the free movement restrictions, land and properties confiscation, arbitrary detention, and so on. So I'll go through each of these challenges, and like I give you an example on each one of these. So like regarding the movement between the cities and outside Palestine, Israel continued to restrict the freedom of movement of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza through checkpoints and roadblocks. Israel maintained its illegal blockade, like air, land, and sea blockade of the Gaza Strip, subjecting its residents to collective punishment and deepening the humanitarian crisis there. Also restricting the movement of people and goods in and out of the area continued to have a devastating impact on the human rights of 2 million inhabitants for the 12th year in a row. And Israel also displaced over 900 Palestinians in the West Bank as a result of home demolitions in order to expand the legal settlements and related infrastructure in the occupied West Bank, even including the East Jerusalem. So here we can see the contradiction of the US government in dealing with this issue. For example, last year on 19th November, they announced that it wouldn't be considered Israeli settlements in the West Bank as illegal under the international law. But on 25th of March, the US President Donald Trump, he recognized Israel's sovereignty over the occupied Golan Heights. So this contravened the UN Security Council resolution that declared Israel's annexation illegal. Israel also authorities conducted hundreds of raids throughout the West Bank and to arrest Palestinians, and usually at their homes at night. They were detained and along with 1,000 other Palestinians arrested in the previous year. This violates the international humanitarian law, which prohibits the transfer of detainees into the territory of the occupying power. Children, of course, never been accepted from this equation. For example, the last report of Amnesty, Israel held about 200 Palestinian children in prison, including 2 in administrative detention. So Palestinian civilians, including children, were prosecuted in military courts that did not meet the international fair trade standards. So under international law, children should be measures of last resort and for the shortest appropriate time. And Israeli soldier, police, and Israeli security agency continue to torture Palestinian detainees, including children, with impunity. So reported methods included beating or slapping or painful shackling or sleep deprivation, use of stress position and threats. This kind of ways they use to torture the detainees. So the Israeli authorities use a range of measures, including raids, incitement campaigns, movement restrictions, to target human rights defenders, journalists, and even other who criticize Israel's continuing occupation in the West Bank and Gaza. I can end up also with about the discrimination they use against the Palestinian. The Amnesty, for example, published in last report in their website in 1919, the Israel Prison Service refused to request a translate prison regulations into Arabic, filed by the Association for Civil Rights. It argued that it was not required to do so by the nation's state law. So this kind of discrimination between the Palestinians living under the occupation and the Israel themselves. I can conclude with this that we should always speak up for our right, for our causes, and being silent is not the way to solve this cause. I always believe that the ignorance will not benefit our cause, but the knowledge does. So we should all deepen our knowledge about our causes, about the Rohingya, about the Uyghur, about Palestinian, Kashmir, all other causes that we believe in. And we should raise awareness about it and get more people involved and support your cause, because the much you can get supporting, the much people they believe in your cause, and people they will campaign for your cause. So we should learn from history that nations dealt with the defeated and undefeated occupation. For example, the South Africa experience in opposing the apartheid. So this is how we can collaborate together, and this is how we can help our people to know more about our cause. Thank you very much. It's muted. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you very much, Amr. That's very insightful, all within the 10 minutes. And there's so much to unpack. You covered freedom of movement, effective punishment, land grab, annexation, home raids, violation of international law, child prisoners, targeting journalists, a law to legalize discrimination. And I like the way you ended it in terms of we need to deepen our understanding of the Palestinian cause, but other causes, and that's part of the reason why we're here today, to deepen understanding and create those connections so that we can all unite to hopefully end these injustices. So Amr, thank you very much, and I'll bring you in for the Q&As afterwards. Our next speaker is Ahmed Bin Qasim, who will be talking to us about Palestine. Talking to us about Kashmir. So Ahmed, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and the floor, or the virtual floor, is.
Yeah. So, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yep, you're audible.
Thank you. So, my name is Ahmed Bin Qasim, and I was born and raised in Indian occupied Kashmir, and I'm a student of anthropology and son of 2 political prisoners. So, I come from Kashmir, and Kashmir has been living under India's occupation for the past 72 years. It began in 1947 when Indian armed forces forcibly occupied Kashmir. Now, what we have seen in recent times is a shift, or we can say a transition from conventional military occupation to a form of settler colonialism. Now, why is India taking this recourse to settler colonialism? It is because if I use the words of Theodor Herzl to explain this, Theodor Herzl, the founder or the pioneer of Zionism, is quoted to have said in his defense or in his justification of settler colonialism that if I want to construct a new building, I must demolish before I construct. So, for the past 72 years, the Indian state has used every form of avenue to crush the sentiment or aspiration of Kashmiri Muslims vis a vis self determination. They have used force, they have used incentives as well. And all the human rights violations that have occurred in Kashmir have occurred as a result of this struggle that the Kashmiris have been leading. And it's very important for us to understand. I mean, we talk about human rights violations, we talk about oppression, we talk about arbitrary detentions, we talk about custodial killings and torture. All of this has been happening in Kashmir. But what we have to understand is that the people of Kashmir are asking for freedom, and that is why these human rights violations are happening. They are not asking for freedom because these human rights violations are happening. So, when we talk about settler colonialism, why is India taking recourse to settler colonialism? Kashmir is a Muslim majority territory, and the people there demand complete freedom from Indian legislature, Indian army, Indian judiciary, every institution that has to do with India. And for the past 72 years, Indian state has not been able to crush this aspiration. Now, as long as Kashmiri Muslim society exists, as long as the values and the ethics and the history and the culture that governs this society exists, there's going to be resistance. It's something that we are born with. So, what the Indian state tries to do is to replace this Kashmiri Muslim indigenous society with a settler society that is not hostile to Indian colonial rule. And that is exactly what they have been doing. In August 2019, last year, Indian state abrogated Article 370 and Article 35A. Now, the people of Kashmir do not desire any form of association with Indian state, be it uh, through a special status, be it through a semi-autonomous way of association with the Indian state. We don't want it. We demand complete freedom. But the problem with this abrogation of Article 370, which allowed Kashmiris to have their own flag, to have nominal autonomy, but what was important is that before the abrogation of Article 370, the property rights in Kashmir, the right to buy land, was limited to Kashmiris. But after the abrogation of Article 370, now anyone from India, especially the members of Indian armed forces and migrant laborers, can buy and purchase land in Kashmir, and they're also eligible for domicile rights. So, what essentially India is trying to do is that by bringing in settlers from India and settling them in Kashmir, they have two aims out of it. The first aim is that to change the demography of Kashmir and turn the Kashmiri Muslims into a minority in their own homeland. And as Patrick Wolf tells us, that settler colonialism is not an event, it's not a singular event, it's a process, a structure that's going to take time, and it has already begun in Kashmir. So, by changing the status of Kashmiri Muslims into a minority in their own homeland, the first thing that India aims at achieving is assimilation through cultural imperialism, by attacking the culture of Kashmiris, by attacking the religion of Kashmiris, by privatizing the religion of Kashmiris, which is Islam, by emasculating it, by taking away from it everything that threatens the legitimacy or the rule of Indian state in Kashmir, by completely emasculating it. They want to first of all attack Kashmiri culture, everything that impels Kashmiris towards resisting Indian colonial rule. And the second thing they want to achieve is there is this United Nations resolution, UNSCR resolution number 48, I guess, that gives the people of Kashmir this right to determine their own fate through a referendum or a plebiscite. Now, by changing the demography of this disputed territory, India is basically making that referendum futile, because if the demography is changed, there is no point of that referendum when the population numbers have been changed. So, this is the first thing that we need to understand about Kashmir. The people of Kashmir have been fighting for complete freedom from Indian rule. The second thing that we have to understand is that when you talk about law or legality, it's very important to understand that law is as good as the maker of that law. So, the Indian occupation in Kashmir, everything they do, they have created this own domestic legal infrastructure. And this infrastructure, the job that this legal infrastructure has, is not the dispensation of justice. So, law is a very effective colonial tool and enables better colonial domination. Like when you talk about Kashmir, you have this range of colonial laws such as Public Safety Act. And what does Safety Act mean? It means that the Indian state can jail any Kashmiri, and they have jailed thousands of Kashmiris for up to 2 years without trial. And they have been jailing people for Orwellian thought crimes. I mean, people have not yet committed a crime, and this crime is the crime of resistance, which comes very naturally to Kashmiris because it's a proof of their humanity. I mean, if you resist colonialism, you're just proving that you're a human being. If you don't resist colonialism, something is wrong with your humanity. So, when you talk about Public Safety Act, the Indian state can jail any Kashmiri for up to 2 years without any trial. And then you have the AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and this enables the Indian Army to shoot at sight and to shoot any Kashmiri merely on the basis of suspicion. And thousands of Kashmiris have been killed as a result of this act, and many women have been raped as a result of this act. And this act also protects the Indian armed forces from any sort of persecution, and they're given a complete free reign. Then you have the recent abrogation of Article 370 and Article 35A. So, what does it show? It shows that the colonizer uses both the application of the law and the suspension of the law as effective tools against native people. Now, if I talk about my personal perspective, my understanding of it, or my experience of it, uh, my mother is in jail right now. She's been in prison for the past 3 years, and we are allowed to talk once in a month over a phone call. And we have been allotted a time of 10 minutes, like I can speak to my own mother for 10 minutes. And there's this policewoman who stands right beside my mother and constantly reminds her of the fact that her time of speaking is running out. So, what does it signify? First of all, it signifies that the colonizer aims at regulating the most private and intimate space of the native people. Now, this stranger or this alien colonizer is telling me and thousands of Kashmiri children and determining their duration of speech or conversation with their own mother. But when I used to go see my father in prison, we had our duration of hugs being regulated. I mean, you could hug for this period of time and then you were asked to separate. Now, this is the way the occupation attacks the most intimate spaces of the lives of the colonized people. Now they make laws. I mean, they made this law that I can speak to my mother for 10 minutes. This was a time, a space of time, or a period of time that was determined and uh, validated by themselves. But as soon as we talk for 5 minutes, the policewoman starts telling my mother that her time is up. Now, this is to tell her that there is no system or there is no law that she can count on. This is to tell her that there is no legality or there is no law behind occupation. It's just, as Fanon tells us, it's not a thinking machine. Its only purpose is to hurt you, to oppress you, and to make life more and more difficult for you. So I remember this incident once. I mean, I went to see my father in prison, and I was a child back then, and we had this parent-teacher meeting at school, and he could not accompany me, so I was uh, feeling overwhelmed. So I went to see him in prison the next week, and I asked him, why can't our life be normal? I mean, why can't I have you at home? Why can't I sit with you, talk to you? And he told me that our life was very normal. And it kind of surprised me and astonished me because having both your parents as political prisoners and living as basically half orphan in Kashmir, you have this concept of half orphans and half widows, which means women and children whose whose husband and whose parents are in jail respectively, or they have been forcibly disappeared, and they don't know whether they are alive or dead. So I told him, how can this be normal? And what he told me always stays with me. He told me that when you live under slavery, the act of resisting slavery is normal. And if you end up in jail, or if you end up on gallows for resisting colonialism or resisting oppression, it's very normal. Now, if you sit at home happily, if you're indifferent to what is happening around you, if you're indifferent to the oppression that makes your life and the life of all the people around you difficult, if you're living happily under it, then that is abnormal. Then something is wrong with you. Something is wrong with you very deeply. So I think uh, this stays with me, and this is something that I always try to remember. And all the people who are living under oppression should always remember that the fact that they're feeling hurt, the fact that they're resisting it, is actually a proof of their humanity, and they should not, under any circumstances, just for the sake of convenience. I mean, in Kashmir, in Palestine, in the case of Uyghur Muslims as well, we are being constantly told to tone down our voices, to privatize our religious visibility, to make sure that when we speak about our rights, we don't invoke religion or we don't look like Muslims. So we should tone down the religious part of it just to make our cause palatable to a liberal Western audience. So we should never do that. We should never allow anyone to criminalize any assertion of our Muslim identity. I think that's something that everyone here in this panel can relate to, because we all belong to territories that are largely Muslim majority territories. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed, for that. That's a deeply personal story coming from your experience, and that's what occupation is. I think sometimes when you're far away, like myself in London, those stories really hit home. The fact that you can only hug your mother for 10 minutes, but they can reduce at any point. The fact that there is no law for you to turn back to for security or support. In fact, it's there to occupy. It's there to be a problem. You were talking about shooting on sight in terms of the same kind of issue in Palestine that I know that Amar was talking about before, administrative detention. Lots of similarities there, unfortunately, and colonization is kind of the key word there in terms of Palestine and Kashmir, and something that you're right that we need to continuously challenge. So thank you very much for your contribution. Our next speaker will be Shirazul Islam, who will be talking to us about the campaign for the Rohingya people.
Thank you, and thank you to my previous speakers for the wonderful contributions they made. My name is Shirazul Islam, and I'm a Rohingya member of the British Rohingya community based in the UK. And I was born in the refugee camp in Kutupalong, Bangladesh, part of the 1.5 million Rohingya refugees that are residing there. I spent 8 years of my childhood in the refugee camp. My parents spent 18 years of their lives in the refugee camp. And my grandmother, who's still inside the camp right now, has spent 30 years plus within the Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh. So you can see the generational impact that the conflict has had on our people, on our generations, and on our community as a whole. To give you a bit of a background about the Rohingya conflict, I'll tell you how it started, why it started, and the reason it's still ongoing even after 70 years, even after 30 years of my grandmother living inside a refugee camp. The Rohingya people are a minority within Burma in Myanmar, Southeast Asia, and on the border with India, with Bangladesh and China. Part of the many ethnic minorities within Burma are the Rohingyas, and they are one of the most persecuted minority within the world and within Burma as well. And we are a majority Muslim minority. And the reason we are Muslim, the reason we are Rohingya, and the reason our skin color looks different, our culture looks different, our language looks different, has been because of history. And that all the previous things I just mentioned has been the reason we have been persecuted so much. We look conventionally different to what majority of Burmese look like. We speak the different language, and we have a different culture. Hence, we have been persecuted for it. We have been punished for exercising our right to freedom, our right to religious freedom, and our right to language. The persecution started, like in many cases, like my previous speakers mentioned, with the government, with colonization. And colonization has a deep-rooted impact within the Rohingya conflict. Burma was colonized by the British, by the UK. And after the UK left, after the British left Burma, we were promised, well, ethnic minorities of Burma were promised a sort of federal system, a sort of some kind of control over their own land, their own policies, their own language. However, what happened was the British left without sorting it out, without doing any sort of segregation or division of power, and hence the leading up us to today. The first conflict with the Rohingyas happened in late 1970s, and it was called Operation Dragon King, which roughly translates to what they wanted was a clean nation. And how they did that was they used to torture the Rohingyas. They used to go into the Arakan state, the Rakhine state, used to torture the Rohingyas, used to use methods to drive them outside of their own homes. And they did this continuously up until today, up until 2017. And in 2017, this was the largest wave of persecution. This was the largest wave of migration, where the Burmese military, because of the persecution, it resulted in around 750,000 Rohingyas migrating outside of their homes and into Bangladesh, spending days through their journey, and many people dying on the way. My own cousin, he was shot by the military. My own family, my parents, had to flee Burma in early 1990s because of this persecution. What they would do is they would come into your house, they arbitrarily would torture you, forced labor, use rape as a weapon of war. They would contaminate your water with diseases. They would get criminals from outside of the Rakhine state and put them inside inside our villages, inside the Rakhine state, to find a way, to find an excuse to police us, to control our daily livelihoods. So you can see all these methods that they've used are not something that they've made up on the spot, are not something that happened overnight. It's been continuously planned. It was a continuous genocide where it started from just mere arbitrary detention to using weapon of rape as a weapon of war, destruction of homes, burning homes. And the reason why they've done this is many people can guess, but evidently it's shown that it is because we are different. It is because we do not look the same, we do not speak the same, and our cultures are not the same. And moreover, they have economical incentives with from getting rid of the Rohingyas from the Rakhine state. Our land are being used for businesses now. So moving on to the other side of the landscape, moving on to the other side, how our people have migrated and their conditions now. We have been in the refugee camps for 30 years right now. And now since 2017, it has expanded largely, where when I was in the camp, there was about under 200,000 Rohingyas, and within the same land, within the same space of land, within the same geography, there are over 1.5 million Rohingyas living there now in bad sanitary conditions, in bad hygiene, and they have no access to education, they have no access to medication, they have no homes, they have none of the basic essentials, none of the basic things that we look to we see as a given in everyday life. They don't have any of that. I spent 8 years of my life not going to school, not doing what an 8-year-old would do on a daily basis. I spent my childhood thinking about when am I going to eat my next meal, when am I going to see my family, when is the next time I'll see someone being beaten up, someone being killed in front of me. And those are the fears that many of the Rohingyas still live in till today. And within the conditions of the camp, our people have gone through many problems. Given today's circumstances, the coronavirus has impacted the camp vastly. We have no no proper hospital, no proper healthcare, no proper medication for our people to turn to. We can't exercise social distancing, and we can't exercise proper hygiene, because these are the things that we have been restricted of. And our camps, the camps right now that the people are living in, are being barriered off. So they've put barriers, chain barriers, steel barriers all around the camps, so people can't come in and go outside of the camps. They can't work outside of the camp. They can't go study outside of the camp, and they don't have the facilities to study, to work, to move up within the camp. So essentially, what they're living in is an open prison. However, on the brighter side, recently, last year, January, the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, has taken the case of the Rohingyas to their court in at The Hague, and they've unanimously ruled in a preliminary hearing to ordered that the Burmese authorities stop any form of genocide, stop any form of persecution. However, to the extent to which they have stopped, the extent to which they have listened to the court, it is questionable, because ever since the ruling, ever since the judgment, I could tell you all night about the number of people that have been killed, about the number of people that have been arrested, about the number of people who have been still persecuted. So there is a long step, a long journey ahead of us. And I want to leave our viewers with this little note. The first thing that you need to do is seek knowledge. You need to learn about the Rohingyas. You need to learn about the Kashmiris, the Uyghurs, the Palestinian people. And that is the only way you can help them. You need to go outside there in the world and learn about the current conditions, because this isn't something that happened 70 years ago, 30 years ago. This isn't something that happened in the past. You're living through a genocide. I went through a genocide. I'm a genocide survivor, and I am going through that today, and so are my people. So seek knowledge, and remember this: history will record the crimes of bystanders. You're as bad as the people that have committed persecution against our people if you do not do anything about it. So I urge everyone to go out there and seek knowledge about the condition of the world that we're living in. Thank you.
Shazul, thank you for sharing that. Again, another such a personal story. Again, deeply moving, and it shows how deep everything is, and you've done that wonderfully. And in terms of, again, connecting the struggle, you spoke about refugee camps, again, something that the other campaigns can connect to, the generational impact, how it's been going on from generation to generation, how that matters. Colonization coming aboard again, economic incentives for people to take your land, and how that works. And in terms of the current situation, the coronavirus, and how the lack of medication, or the inability to social distance because of space, and how that plays a part in reality right now. These are all very, very important points you raised. So again, Jules, thank you very much for your talk. Our final speaker, I'm not Shazul. Our final speaker that we have today is Jawhar Ilan, who will be discussing the issue of the Uyghur Muslims.
Hello everyone, my name is Jawhar Ilham. It is an honor to be speaking with all these amazing activists today at this platform. To be honest, after listening to all these all previous speakers' speeches, the similarities of the condition of the people to my people scare me. It really does scare me every time when I hear when Amro and Ahmed and Sirazul, sorry, excuse me if I mispronounced your names, when I heard when they described the conditions of their people, it resembles so much of what is going on with what the Uyghur people are going through. So the Uyghur people have not been introduced to the world until very recently. People were not very aware of who we are, and some of them didn't even know we existed. I would like to begin my part with giving everyone a brief introduction of geopolitical and historic context of the Uyghur crisis. So the Uyghurs in our language is called Uyghur. In English is Uyghur. The Uyghurs are a Turkic-speaking ethnic minority group who are living in the Uyghur region, known to Chinese people as Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, and known to many local people, Uyghur people, as East Turkestan. And as some of you may already know, over the last few years, it is estimated that there are over 1 to 1.8 million Uyghur people and members of other predominantly Muslim minorities, like Kazakh, Kyrgyz people, have been sent to re-education camps or forced labor centers, where they face where they face a number of abuses. And for over a decade, the Chinese government has been subjecting Uyghurs to repressive policies in the name of countering terrorism and combating religious extremism in the region. And the government has seized on isolated instances of violence or unrest in the region to label all the Uyghur people and Muslims in the region as terrorists, saying that these ethnic groups are importing Islamic extremism to Central Asia. But there are so many other considerations underpinning China's project to seize control of the Uyghur region and subdue the Uyghur population. First of all, China has a very large focus on the Uyghur region because of its geopolitical value. The Uyghur region is full of natural resources such as gold, uranium, natural gas, of which reserves make up more than 20% of China's energy reserves, and turning the region into a national powerhouse. And as you may also have heard recently, that the Uyghur region accounts for over 84% of China's total cotton output, and which is 1/5 of the global cotton supplies. And the region is also home to some of the most important elements of the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which is China's flagship trade project. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which went into effect in 2013. That's also when my father was arrested. Me and my father was apart. That was a year that I had to leave my family and come to the United States, where my father was put under house arrest. So 2013, and it was aimed to link, the Belt and Road Initiative was to link Beijing with more than 100 countries around the world via railroads, gas pipelines, shipping lanes, and other infrastructure projects. And many people ask, we never heard of Uyghurs before, and how do you confirm that there are over 1 million Uyghurs are locked up? So, but these numbers were released by researchers and experts, but also recently the State Council Information Office of China had released a white paper stating that since 2014 there have been over 1.29 million people per year passing through vocational training centers, which is one of the many terms the Chinese government uses to refer to internment and re-education camps. And this constitutes the largest mass detention of an ethno-religious community since the World War II. The Chinese government is also transporting Uyghur people and other Turkic and Muslim majority peoples to other parts of China, where they're working in factories under conditions that strongly indicates forced labor. And those are systematic and state-sponsored forms of forced labor, which intersects with other egregious human rights abuses, which includes the destruction of the architecture as a means to wipe out century-old cultural landmarks, undermining the Uyghur customs and culture, widespread arbitrary detention, political indoctrination, transformation, family separation, which I experienced personally, and pervasive surveillance, which I grew up experiencing that in my own household. This summer, it has also become very clear that the Chinese government is using forced sterilization and other types of draconian forced birth control methods targeted at Uyghurs and other ethnic groups in the Uyghur region. And over the past 4 years, the government has performed forced birth control on hundreds of thousands of women from the Uyghur or other Turkic Muslim communities. And the birth rate of the Uyghur region has dropped nearly 24% in a single year in 2019. I would like to share my screen in order to just show some examples of the state imposed transformations. Just give me one moment, please. Okay, it's working. Yes. I hope everyone can see my screen. From this image, it's just an example of the minarets of the building have been taken down, and the city also removed the Arabic script from the building, transformed it by adding patriotic slogans in Chinese, just to make it look more like the rest of China. If you could see here, it says, love Communist Party, love China, love country. And beside this, the government also sanitized halal food, which is, for people who are not very familiar with what sanitize mean, it's the process by which non-Han Chinese societies come under the influence of Han Chinese culture, language, and ethnic identity, which in this case, China has been forcing sanitization on the Uyghur people as a way to erase Uyghur culture. And this, in this slide, this is a government's regulation for restaurants, and anything with Christian moons, Arabic scripts, anything that it shows shows the Islamic sentiment into it, then it's not allowed. You can only present it in the Chinese saying "qingzhen," which means halal. As part of the transformation, the Chinese government has also instituted an entire police state that involves huge surveillance operations, among other measures, and they have set up lots of police stations and checkpoints across the region. And these are just randomly located anywhere on the street to manage and control people's flows. They have set up stops on the streets. Every few blocks, you will see the Chinese police sitting next to a desk, requiring people to deposit their phones. And the police just do that in order to download all the data and upload surveillance technology or softwares to people's phone. Just a small share. I would like to share my experience, my family's experience, which is my cousin was actually stopped at one of those checkpoints in 2017, and she was sentenced for 10 years for refusing to hand in her cell phone. And this is a very common thing, and it's not just happening to one single case. Many people get sentenced for ridiculous reasons without going through a trial. And besides that, the Chinese government has also deployed facial recognition systems that are designed to distinguish Uyghur people from other ethnic groups. And this facial recognition equipment is able to distinguish who you are, if you're Uyghur or not, if you're Han Chinese or Uyghur, and where you live, even if you're wearing a face mask. In this picture, there are over 7 cameras in just half block in order to track people's movements and determine whether they are involved in suspicious activities, which can be almost anything now. I would also like to share this population data collection form used by the local authorities, which collects information such as how many times a person prays, if they have overseas contacts, whether they are passport holders, other countries they have visited, or just simply their ethnic identities. And the government can use any of these data points as a reason to send someone to a camp for re-education. And here are some photos of the camps. You can tell that the numbers and sizes of these re-education centers and forced labor factories have been rapidly expanding the past 2 years. And the government also claims that these sprawling camps with barbed wire and armed guard towers are vocational training centers. But this reminds me of more of a prison instead of a vocational training centers. Despite the massive surveillance, Uyghurs have been finding creative ways to make their stories known. Just like to. I don't want to take too much of people's time, so just I just showed 2 sample videos. I have more than hundreds of them in my mailbox. Because of the strong heavy censorship and surveillance, people there are very limited ways for people to share their stories and to get the information out. But thankfully, there still have been brave people. Willing to risk their lives just to tell the world what is happening to the Uyghur communities. So in this photo, you can see there are hundreds of profile pictures, and in this picture, people are mainly intellectuals, medical doctors, business people, singers, soccer players, comedians, and including my father here on top corner left, a university professor who is now serving a life sentence in a prison in China. And I don't think any of those people need a job training. And how do I shit? Okay. Sorry, I was trying to stop sharing my screen. I don't think any of those people need so-called job trainings. What they need is to be able to stand under the roof of their own house with their own family members. I haven't heard anything of my father since 2017. Family visit is not allowed at all. My father was arrested and sentenced in 2014, and he was sentenced for life for advocating for peaceful coexistence between the Han Chinese and the Uyghur people. But the government accused him for being a separatist, an extremist, and someone who advocates for violence. And that can be farthest from the truth. My father was known to be the peaceful advocate for the people, for ethnic minorities' rights, not only the Uyghur people's rights, but anyone who have their rights taken. And this is not only happening to my family. There are so many, hundreds of thousands of Uyghur daughters and sons can't communicate with their families, don't know if their parents are even alive, don't know. Not everyone is lucky enough to even get their family's name out to be known to the world. Like me, I have to say I am the lucky ones because I was able to skip China. I was able to come to the United States, but so many others, they're not lucky enough to have their stories told, and a lot of them were just forced to disappear and have their entire history of existence wiped out from the world. And I really would like this to end. I would like to echo what Amro said in the beginning, that there's everything, there's an end to it. That's actually what my father told me before. There's no eternity for anything. Everything, there's an end to it. And I do hope situation is so bad now that one day soon, hopefully soon that we all can see the end to it. I hope the good days come soon, and I hope all of us, that we can see our family and our loved ones to be free. And yeah, that's my hope.
Dara, thank you for again sharing another deeply personal story. I mean, the stories from all of you guys. Thank you for sharing it, and I'm hoping that the viewers listening, it's resonated with you enough for us to do something. As Amr said at the beginning, it's important, and the other speakers have said, it's important to gain the knowledge, and that's what this first part was about. It's about gaining the basic knowledge about what's happening. And Jawar, what you said at the very beginning was you were scared by the similarities that all the campaigns have, and that is scary. The fact that it's happening in pockets of the world and we're not connecting it together, just like everything's connected against us, we should be connecting to fight this injustice. Just because we work on Palestine doesn't mean we can't work on the Uyghur issue or the Rohingya issue or the Kashmir issue. We find enough space as individuals in our time, in our day, to advocate all these causes. There isn't a hierarchy here. It's all injustice, and all the injustice needs to be combated. But it works better if we connect with each other. It works better if we can draw the parallels where we've seen that a lot of these issues are around colonization. There's a lot of issues around identity, issues around making Muslims the terrorists and making them the problems here. We've seen issues of land grab, detention, rights of visitation not there, laws enacted for apartheid, for the taking of all sense of humanity and decency. And these are the things that now we need to kind of have a discussion about. How do we actually connect? We've heard now, but open to you guys in terms of what have you been doing in your specific campaign that's been working for you? What would you like to do that you've not managed to do, that reaching out with a bill help maybe we can do together? So anyone wants to start?
You're muted.
Sorry. I think we can start by as we like everyone do right now, like doing webinars, raising awareness about the cause. Right now, because of the coronavirus, you can see everything just turned on, online. So it's easier for us like to have some like inspirational stories. Like everyone right now, they said they have some experience they already faced in their life. Sharing like these stories, holding webinars, having let's say webinars on a mass scale, I think is the easiest way right now to raise awareness about the cause and let people know more about the cause, and they help to get people supporting this cause. So like for me, the first time like to have be on board with the these honorable speakers telling about the Kashmir, about the Uyghur, about the Rohingya. So it helped me to right now to think about other ways, like how we can collaborate together, how to raise this issue or address it to the other people to know more about this cause. So collaboration and doing some good webinars, activities like this is one of the easiest way to do so.
Anyone else?
I think it's also very important to understand that when we talk about, let's say, the Uyghurs or the Kashmiris or even Palestinians, yes, awareness is important. Yes, knowledge is important, but it's also important what you do with that awareness and what you do with that knowledge. I mean, we don't have all the time in the world with us, so we have to also take into consideration the sense of urgency and this element of urgency that is there. Let's say in the case of Kashmir, I mean, I look at the case of Palestine, and uh, in my little knowledge, I know that there has been a significant change in the demographics of Palestine. Now, nobody, and it's very difficult in Palestine today to talk about reversing the whole process of settler colonialism. It has pretty much become a ground reality. Now, in Kashmir, Kashmiri Muslims still constitute more than 95% of population, but it's not going to stay like that. So when you talk about awareness and when you talk about spreading knowledge, we also have to take into account, let's talk about the Native Americans. I mean, they're nowhere. People know about them, people talk about them, people sympathize with them, but they're not here to listen to that because they have been erased already. So what you do with that knowledge and how this discourse has to be action based is very important, because the colonizers and the oppressors, they're always united in action. Their ideologies differ. I mean, Israel could have a different ideology towards Palestine in comparison to India's ideology towards Kashmir, the oppressive ideology. But their actions are very similar. That's why I have thousand things that I can relate to when it comes to Uyghurs and Palestinians and even Rohingya. So I think that is very important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For us, it's about, as an organization, a campaigning organization, is about knowledge, awareness, and then with that, what do? It's about campaigning, and campaigning, whether that's on the ground in terms of if we're talking about boycotts, if you're talking about parliamentary work, making sure that parliamentarians here in the UK, for example, they understand what issues are going on and they play their role on the international stage to uphold international law. Shazul, would you like to say something? I think you were about to say something.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate or echo both what Ahmed and Amro said in terms of urgency, because like Ahmed has iterated about the Native Americans and about the Palestinians, and just like that, the Rohingya issue is similar in terms of urgency that we need, because the military, the oppressors, have accelerated their oppression in recent years because they've seen that there was no urgency in the sense that the international community, the international government, the UN, the EU hasn't been taking all these necessary steps to stop them. And they saw that as a way, as a mean of accelerating their oppression. And the result is obviously in front of us today. And to give you an example about the sort of urgency that we need is, there's about 400,000 Rohingya youth within the youth class in the camps, and none of them have access to education. And this class of people is going to continuously be illiterate within the coming generations. And what does that do? That wipes off an entire generation of the Rohingya people. Another example, recently, the Rohingyas are being, most of them are being forcefully relocated to Bhasan Char, which is an island of Bangladesh, and this is done by the Bangladeshi government. Most of them have been relocated against their will. What that does is, it takes away the focus from repatriation, the focus from being able to go back to our own homeland, to relocation. It provides them with a temporary solution that becomes permanent in the coming time. And once people start accepting these temporary solutions, it becomes part of the reality. And like Ahmed said, in the future, when it does become the ground reality, it's very, very dangerous, and it's really difficult to change or to go back on these actions. So in terms of the sense of urgency, I think we need to take it right now. This year has been the best year to take action, to take change, because everyone have felt the impact of lockdown. Imagine, because everyone's been in lockdown, but imagine that's what my parents, my grandmother, that's what I've been for the last 30 years. That's how my people have lived for the last 30 years, not being able to go outside, not being able to do your job, not being able to exercise your freedom. And now this urgency needs to come in right now, because we don't, like Ahmed said, we don't want it to turn into a ground reality.
Yeah, Shazul. I mean, the only difference, obviously, with the pandemic and the different causes we're talking about, all our causes are done by governments. That whereas obviously the pandemic is something natural that's unfortunately occurred, but this is systematically being done on purpose, by direction, by plan, to do the different campaigns that we're speaking about. George, did you want to say something?
Yes. I just wanted to echo what Amro said, the importance of the awareness and knowledge. I believe awareness, knowledge leads people to take actions, and the actions leads people to make changes. And what I do suggest for my cause or everybody's cause is to first of all, these damages done to our people was not happen in a day or two. It took years, and it will take years for it to be changed and to get better. So what I suggest, I'm not sure if this is the best way, but what I am doing is to take small steps, step by step. It's like a task. So every time when we finish a task, we're one step closer to our goals. For instance, for the Uyghur cause, one of the serious issue is the forced labor issue, forced labor crisis. Then who are responsible for those forced labor? The government. What do the government care? Money. And who gives the money? Those companies who are sourcing those cottons from the Uyghur region. So who do we target? Those companies, because those are the one will be the leading actions affecting the government's actions. So I am working as a program associate for the Worker Rights Consortium, and we are our organization's role is to combat forced labor all around the world, in Bangladesh, in Thailand. It doesn't matter, in North Korea. Now we're also focusing on the Uyghur region forced labor issues as well. So what we do is we push the brands to exit the Uyghur region. So when they're exited, they've pushed the government, because government don't want to lose the money. So they would have to be forced to stop using forced labor in order to prevent those companies from exiting the region. And with other causes, I would propose similar. I mean, it's going to be different cases, but I would propose smaller steps, and finding, of course, let's say finding the government, asking them to release those people, provide better conditions. They might listen to you, and they would ignore you. But that's why we need to go reach out to people who they would actually listen to, which is either the companies or international communities or international court, whoever can make the move. Let's reach out to them. That would be my suggestions.
Yeah. Absolutely. In terms of time's running out for us, but if I could come back to you, Jawar, and ask you and I'm going to ask all of you guys, one action you would like the viewers to take on.
Should I start first?
Yep.
One action I'd like to ask people to take is, first, it's a bigger action that leads to smaller actions. First, check enduyghurforcedlabor.org. It's a website can teach you all what you can do, and all what is happening, and what you can do, what has been done, what can be done on this crisis, on this issue. And it provides information on the bans, the resolutions, the Magnitsky Act that have been applied on this cause from different countries. And it provides who are the brands, which are the brands that are complicit in the forced labor crisis. So consumers don't have the choice of, if the government cannot force the government to stop using forced labor, but they have power over their own wallets, and they have the power to push the brands to stop being complicit in the forced labor. So that would be the thing I would like to ask people, whoever is watching this, to take.
What was that website again?
enduyghurforcedlabor.org. enduyghurforcedlabor.org.
Excellent. Thank you. Amar?
You're muted.
Again and again, sorry. So simply I can say, I would say, like, wherever I have something to defend, because we all defend our rights. This is our right. So I will, from now, like for me, like I right now know more about the Uyghur, about the Rohingya, about the Kashmir. So whenever for example, I travel, wherever I go, I will always speak up for these issues, because I believe in right now. So for me, wherever I go, speaking up is one of the easiest solution, like to help in raising awareness about the cause, or even taking actions. So that's why for me, for now, like,
okay. So for you, your action would be making sure you're spreading the awareness by actually talking to people, talking to everyone within your circles, and making sure that everyone knows about these issues.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And of course, like, if you allow me, let's say participating with organizations like FOA, who are helping like to hold some webinars about this issue, or even doing campaigning, even helping to talk to MPs. Like for example, in the UK, we ask students like to address the issues to the MPs, because MPs right now, for example, let's say they are in the power, so they can take actions. So trying to reach people who really can have action or can do something or can change, try to tell them more, try to educate them more, so they can, maybe later they can take action instead of you.
Thank you. Ahmed?
Yeah, I think you see, we live in a world where you don't have any dearth of suffering, and human beings have this tendency to get at times get desensitized. When you listen to the same thing again and again, you might get desensitized after a certain point of time. So I think therefore it's very important when you, for example, if you want to uh, understand or do something for the Palestinian cause, talk to the Palestinians and listen to what they have to say, and don't tell them what they should do. Listen to what they have to say. Similarly, when you talk about the Uyghurs, listen to their suffering, listen to their personal stories. Don't just, you see, newspapers have this tendency to reduce human beings to figures, and figures and numbers, they desensitize you. So when you listen to personal narratives, it kind of keeps that thing alive in your heart where you actually feel something, and it's not just information that we're talking about.
Yeah, no, and that's why I think today's been so powerful, to be honest. The personal stories that come from everyone, hopefully when we edit the webinar and we get it out to more people and people hear the personal stories from you guys, it will create that sense of urgency that you guys have been speaking about to actually act, because you're completely right. There is a sense of urgency and we need to act. So thank you, Ahmed. Shirazul?
Thank you. I think Ahmed told you my one. I was going to say still, our people, all the minorities are more than facts and figures. Don't reduce our emotions. Don't reduce our stories. Don't reduce our experience to a number. And more importantly, the specific actions you can all take depending on the part of the world you're in. If you're in the UK, it's great because I'm in the UK. Reach out to me and my organization at britishrohingyacommunity.com.uk. Reach out to me on social media, and there are many plans, actions we can take. We can write to your MPs, we can come and give seminars, we can do workshops together to raise awareness. If you're in the States, there's currently a petition going on online in the US. It's to get senators and US officials to call the Rohingya genocide a genocide. So it has legal backing, so you could sign that petition. But this is the world that we're living in 2020. We have rich information, we have the internet, we have Google. So reach out to our organizations, reach out to our causes, and there's many things that we can do together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers. It's been very informative, but I genuinely hope this is just the beginning of our platform of working together in coordination, because having one-off sessions just to tick a box does nothing. Having knowledge is important, as we've all said, but we have to learn to do something with it. And I genuinely believe we can start with ourselves and the viewers who join us. We can unite to actually have some actionable changes. There's a lot of experience within the speakers here. You guys are experts within your field. You know other people as well. Let's bring this together to ensure that we have action, because with the urgency, with the information, we can't sit around. And part of the problem is what Ahmed said was desensitization. We're so accustomed to seeing everything. We're like, yeah, it's bad, but but we're also demoralized. We think, hey, what can we do? What is there to do? Can I do anything? And that's one of the biggest problems, that we have a lack of self-belief that we can actually make a difference. We can make a difference, but we have to bother to make a difference. We have to bother to engage, and it can't be just like and a share. We have to physically, when COVID allows us to go out and meet people and organize and go back into our communities and let people know what's going on. Speak to the parliamentarians, make them accountable to you, whether you're in America or the UK or wherever you are in the world. Make our parliamentarians, those in authority, accountable to us. We vote for them, and make sure that they represent what we want them to do. Hold them to account. Don't take no for an answer. Sometimes we think, oh, we've written the letter, we've gone to demonstration, nothing's actually happened, and we think, okay, we've done our bit. or we've been active for a year, you know, for a whole academic year at university, we've been active, maybe 2, maybe 3. But then we go to work, then we go have a family, then we get busy, and then we forget. What was that activism just for the sake of activism because everyone was doing it? Or was there a moral reason for you to get involved in the first place? Because that action and that morality, that's still there. The reason, the injustice still remains. So we can't be, I know we're very busy, but we can't just be temporary in our activism. As Jawar said, you know, sometimes we have to look at things, do things step by step, and we'll get there. Let's not give up. Do something small, but do it often, and we will get there, and we'll get there together. So everyone, again, to our speakers, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you found it useful. I found it extremely informative. I hope our viewers did so as well. And everyone, please do connect our viewers. And from FWay's perspective, we'll be putting all this online. And then your organization and the activities that you're doing will slowly promote working with you. And that's the pledge that I'm making to you all. So again, thank you very much. Thank you to our viewers. Assalamu alaikum, and see you soon.